Shalom. All praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rakhakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who do rule well, and peace mercy to the hopeful elect, the 144,000 men that are doing his work in sincerity and in truth across the four corners of the earth, and much love to the one-third and the innumerable multitude of you believers. To you all, I say Shalom. I'm the brother Yeshaya from the Great Millstone West Palm Beach Church. I pray, Lord willing, that this lesson is edifying through the Spirit. In Salakia, if y'all haven't seen videos on my page the past few days, because we had a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful regional gathering with, the brothers from Alabama and the brothers from Georgia and Alabama, and Florida, all gathered through the Spirit, and I've been doing videos on other brothers' pages and things like that, you know. And I'm not too big on the re-uploads. I wish I could do it and do it easier, but I'm not big on those. So I just let it be out there. The Lord sees our works, But as I was meditating, on a lot of things that we discussed, it was so much wealth of knowledge. Let me start by saying that. So much knowledge, so much spiritual insight, you know. We had all of the brothers around, and Elder Bishop Itazawan from Atlanta, and Elder Itazawan from Wisconsin was there too, and just all of the information that we learned from them, that they passed down on to us, the wisdom, and even the brothers, brothers from the different camps, man. Brothers gave me so much wise words that I needed to hear and so much perspective on things, man. Honestly, growth and life-changing, life-altering things for a positive way, And I'm planning on applying and implementing a lot of those things in my spiritual walk because, there's always things that we can do to grow, man. There's always things that we can do to mature in the spirit, And it's such a beautiful thing through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem Shah. So I wanted to get some of these scriptures. I'm not gonna make this too long. Hopefully today I can knock out like 2-3 lessons, man. It's in my spirit to do so if the Lord will. I got some things to do. I haven't had a day to myself in so long, like it seems like weeks. I've been working, and we had the brothers here, and trying to take care of. Well, they was in Miami. We was in Miami, but did my close to kin, and when brothers come around, you just can't help but serve, man. You tack on the more the spirit of Yahweh Shai when brothers come around, and so we just can't help but serve, man. But may the Lord all keep showing us the right way, and giving us great leaders from the apostles on down, man. All right, but this is 1 Peter 2:1. It says, "Wherefore, laying aside all malice and all guile and hypocrisies and envies and all evil speakings, as newborn babes desire the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby." Right. So of course, when we came in, we all had to wean from the wean from the tit, man. And drink the milk. The smaller understands the scriptures. It's things like don't eat pork, or you're not supposed to get lineups, or not being idolatrous. A lot of little things that just to flee away from, just to stay away from. We're laying that aside, right? Malice and guile, hypocrisies and envies and evil speakings, And one of the big things that we were talking about was applying the fruits of the spirit, And, that was beautiful because a lot of times we do things, this flesh, one thing that the elder was saying, let me try to find this saying. Yeah, let me see, because I want to quote exactly who said it. Well, it says, I don't know if this is true. I thought it was I'm pretty sure it was a older person. But they saying it's from this lady, Elizabeth Kinney, an Australian nurse. I could have swore it was like from one of the philosophers. But the statement goes, "He who angers you controls you," right? He who angers you controls you. And so we were talking about that a lot, not letting things anger us. You know, of course we're upset. Of course we're angry. Of course we want to get out of here. Of course we hate the state of the world. But, you know, carrying that on raises your cortisol, you know, and stress is one of the number one killers. You know, so applying the fruits of the spirit and living our everyday lives, because now we're maturing in the faith, man. We are becoming, the Lord is trying to take us to another level, brothers, right? All of this, so we talk about the spiritual powers and, you know, all of these things like that, right? But we got to be, the Lord has to mature us to take us to mentally to another level so that we can receive all of these things that he has waiting for us. You know, just when you thought you can't grow, you can. Keep going. You know? And it says, so when I mentioned as a newborn babe, so, hey, man, you know, of course, there's still young men still coming in. All right? But it says, as a baby, you had that sincere milk. But now, even if we chewing on meat helps you grow, right? Meat is meant to make you strong and make you. So now, if you're chewing on meat, you're still growing, brother. You you're just older now. And so now that we're now in the faith, you don't do the same things that you did when you were younger. You don't apply the same actions. You don't. We speak different now. You know, we and because now we know the Bible. Now we understand it. Now we can react in a different way. So maturing in this faith is so vital, man. You know, and I can't stress that enough. It's so vital. Let me type in maturity definition. All right, maturity says the state, fact, or period of being mature. It says, I hate when they do that. Describe a word with a word. All right, let's see. It says, what is the true meaning of maturity? It's the AI. It says, maturity, in essence, is the state of being fully developed, both mentally and emotionally, characterized by wisdom, kakam, responsibility, and the ability to navigate life's challenges with understanding and composure. See, that's beautiful, man. You know, we're being fully developed now, right? Mentally and emotionally characterized by wisdom, right? We're moving with wisdom. When we always say don't be emotional, it's because now we have the wisdom to be able to understand, think rationally, to be stoic like, and not think with our flesh. Okay, being responsible, right? Having the ability to navigate life's challenges with understanding and composure, right? So, we can go through this hell and still be able to navigate our lives with self-respect, with decency, with understanding, right? Those things are very important, man. It says maturity is how someone responds to a situation in an age appropriate manner. Right. That's a good one. An age appropriate manner. So if you got a 3-year-old, you expected him to do little childish shit from time to time, right? If you got a teenager, you know, he might be a super hornball. You know what I'm saying? You know, when you become you now a man, you know, you expected him to act responsibly. And so now that we are in this faith, and you know what I'm saying, and now look, if you've been in the faith 5 years, I ain't saying you should act like a 5-year-old boy, because you're a grown man acting like a 5-year-old boy. That's the difference, right? Even though you're 5 in the faith, hey man, even if you 20 years old and you 5 years in the faith, brother, you got to have a different level of wisdom and knowledge and discipline than the rest of the world doesn't have. So ultimately, your age in the faith does matter, and your age in the world matters too. But you got to know how to act appropriately. That don't mean we can't joke. That don't mean we can't have fun, right? But now you got to be men of truth. Now we gotta stand on what Yahweh Shem Shai has shown us. We gotta have a honest and a good report. You know, we got to put on the spirit of Yahweh Shem Shai, right? So immaturity can stop you from doing many things, man. Right? Immaturity can stop you from being the man that Yahweh Shem Shai wants you to be. Right? You know, we've put off a lot of things. Now look, will I still raise my voice at Cat and things like that? Sure. You know, a lot of things are just our spirit. But at the end of the day, you still got a moment where you can speak to the people with decency, because we got the knowledge. You know, like my beloved, our beloved Elder Big Gas. So he said, you got the knowledge, brother. You know, You got the knowledge, brother. So you got to have the wisdom, you know? So we the ones with the knowledge. So yeah, we're going to still snap at people because we hate this world, right? But at the end of the day, we can talk to these people with a humanly discourse and knowing that we just going to cut them. They're going to lose because they're coming against the Bible and its true understanding. So, you know, we don't got to carry on and calling people out of their names, and we don't got to do all that. And now, you know, when we were especially younger, it's different spirits in the time periods, I guess. You know, there was a time when we was just yelling and snapping on every goddamn body, you know, wanting the world to know. But now we're leveling up through the spirit, you know. So the Lord is trying to show us a better path. And like I said, ain't nothing wrong with snapping on somebody. Ain't nothing wrong with being a brother that's more like that. Cause God knows I'm like that, you know. But at the end of the day, I've always, and this is why I try to put this on, I've always revered the apostles. Like I've always respected the apostles. I see how they have grown, and the elders have grown. I've seen when older brothers and apostles were younger, and you know how the maturity of the spirit acts, and now how they correspond with people and might speak with people. Hey, how you doing, brother? And it might be a bug out. Dude might be a 2/3, man. You know what I'm saying? But hey, how you doing, brother? Yeah, you doing all right? All right. You know, people speak to us, wave at us. Hey, how y'all doing? You know, even if they a heathen, like I'd be like, hey, what's going on? You know what I'm saying? Hey, because at the end of the day, we got the light. You know what I'm saying? So we got the light. We ain't got to be like that. They going to find out that this is the truth, man. And they going to find out the hard way. So we ain't even got to act a certain way no more, man. You know? But we're constantly growing, and the Lord is trying to help us expand our minds, expand our horizons, right? It says, Job 38:3, it says, gird up now thy loins like a man, for I would demand of thee, and answer thou me. So now we got to gird up our loins like a man, right? It didn't say gird up thy loins like a child. All right, you gird up your loins like a man. And I'm going to read this. This is 1 Corinthians 13:10. It said 11. When I was a child, I spake as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Right? So, brother, in your daily life, there are things that brothers are doing that's just childish. You know? Now there are adult human fun activities that you can do, but we're talking about your mindset, right? I'm talking about your mindset. Shit, I play video games, y'all. That don't mean I'm a child. You know what I'm saying? So it's the mindset about how you apply things. Like, okay, let's say you play video games. Brother, are you putting video games over your ministry? Are you putting video games over doing a lesson? Are you putting video games over being on time to camp? Right? You playing a video game and you 30 minutes late to camp because you was playing a video game. Right? It's your mindset behind everything, right? Are you acting like a little child in certain situations? Times when you know it comes to being an adult, are you being mature? Are you doing it as a man should? Right? We call ourselves men of the Lord, but you got to be a man first. Right? When I was a child, I spake as a child. Right? So when you're a child, you make little child voices, you make jokes and little kid voices. You understood as a child. So when you understand as a child, you know, it's like a child walk across the street without looking left or right. But then you tell the child, look left or right before you cross the street, then you cross the street. Right? If you're a grown man and you don't look to see if any cars are coming and your ass get hit, it's like that's something you understood as a child, bro. But now that you're a man, you put away that. Now you know you got to be aware. You got to be circumspect. You know? It says be circumspect because redeeming the times because the times are evil. You know? Being aware of your surroundings. Be aware of the state of the world, man. You see, even being more mature and realizing like, hey, it's cool, brother. If you coming in the faith, hey, even older brothers. The apostles always talk about going back to the basics. So ain't nothing wrong with doing a lesson on pork. But, hey, being aware of the state of the world, being aware of the state of prophecy, right? Donald Trump is going in, Vice President Trump, you know, President Musk. They doing big things, tariffs, you know. We now at the state that we at the almost reaching the top of prophecy, y'all. If this is a mountain, we almost at the little icy part that be on the pictures. You know, we reaching the height of prophecy. Where they're about to implant everybody and take this thing digital, you know? So, man, but now so we understand these things and we think as men now. We understand the greater weight of life, right? It says, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. So this is talking about your mindset. Are you acting like a little kid? Are you a little child, man? He complains about every goddamn thing. He's feel like he's stuck in a situation and he's not going to do anything to help himself, although it's a problem. As a man, you got to pray to the Lord, you know, take your low estate cheerfully and keep it moving, man. But we got to be how we move out here and the things we say, the things we do, how we treat people. Oh yeah, look, don't get me wrong, yeah. I'll put, hey man, I'll hate a heathen in a heartbeat in my mind. But even how we walking in the world, we walking in this world to be beacons for Yahweh Shemel Shai, right? So you can't be cussing everybody out. You gotta act mature. It said, let your right hand not know what not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. So you gotta be at work circumspect, even if you hate your job, man. Look, it's some brothers that like their job more than others, but I don't know. I ain't never met one brother say, brother, I love my job. I ain't never met not one brother that ever said that. So most part, we hate our jobs, man. We in slavery. We hate our jobs. But you can't be at your job snapping off on people, tripping. We got to have more temperance, right? Which I believe is one of the fruits of the Spirit. Let me go ahead and go back to the fruits of the Spirit. You got to have self-control, right? And once again, he who angers you controls you, right? This is Galatians 5:22. It says, but the fruit of this, I'll start up at 19. Now, this is where lawyers started. Now, the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies. And this don't mean that we ain't gonna have hate, y'all. You know what I'm saying? But having that hateful spirit in every one of your daily life is a problem. All right, this ain't mean that you ain't gonna have wrath, but putting on one of these, that's what it's saying. Putting on one of these is a work of the flesh which can become manifest. So you gotta have a better control of your spirit. Envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, of the which I tell you before, as I've also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of the Most High. So they say when you do one of those, you cannot inherit the kingdom of the Most High. So if you're just full of wrath, and feel like you got to bring your wrath on everybody, it's pointless, futile, right? What did it say? The Lord says, vengeance is mine. He will recompense, right? It belonging to him. So he got to, like Bishop Atazim said, who's more mad than Yahweh? Who's more mad than Yahweh Shai, right? Yahweh had he said he had his whole nation taken away from him. I said, damn. We were talking about losses, and sometimes we got to take losses. His whole nation was taken away from him. We JB mad because they lose their car. But the Lord lost his whole nation. The people who he loved above all others were taken away from him. Right? Yahweh Shai, all the things that he did, went through his sacrifices. This is his nation too. So it says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they were talking about how these things have to grow in you, right? It's called the fruit of the Spirit. And fruit have to grow. You don't just see fruit and it's just magically there. So when you came into the truth, you may not have been full of love, joy, or peace, long-suffering, right? Or gentleness, goodness. You might not have been full of faith, but your faith increased. It grew after time. Meekness, being meek to brothers, being gentle to brothers, being temperate, having self-control, right? But we had to grow. It says, and they that are Hamashiachs have crucified the flesh with the affections and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit, okay? So it's important to walk in the Spirit and apply these fruits, man, right? So that we can become better men of Yahweh Shemel Shai, so we can do the things that he's required of us. This is Ecclesiastes 18-20. Before judgment, examine thyself, and in the day of visitation thou shalt find mercy. So you gotta, man, if you examine yourself, I'm gonna say this: if you examining yourself, you gotta worry about less judgment, from brothers from the Lord, because you examining the things that are wrong in you already. So you're already correcting them before anything needs to be done about it. That's the maturity right there. I strive to tell the brothers, like, know yourself. Scriptures talk about do not know thy own selves, right? You got to know yourself. You suppose, look, it's other people. Brothers might know you better than you know yourself, man. But you supposed to know yourself above all others. You spend the most time with yourself. But a lot of people are naive about who they are and what they are, what their purpose is. But you can't be naive about yourself. You got to be like, shit, if you fucking eat a whole lot of sweets, you got to be, I'm just using a random example. You got to be like, man, I got to cut back on these sweets. You eat a lot of sweets. You got to cut back on that shit. You drinking a fucking Coke every day. You're not drinking no water. You got to know yourself and evaluate and try to fix the things that you feel like are flaws. So then you don't even got to worry about judging, because you're judging yourself already, right? This is 2 Timothy 1:13. Hold fast the form of sound words which thou hast heard of me, in faith and in love which is in Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. We holding fast the form of sound words from the Lord, right? These words are sound, man. All right, we got an ever sure mercies, man. This is a ever sure word of prophecy. Okay, so we holding firm to these things, man. So the may Yahweh Shema Shah may show us the way and bless us. Become better. This is 1 Peter 1:7, that the trial of your faith, being much more precious than a fine gold that perishes, though it be tried with fire, might be found unto praise and honor and the glory at the appearing of Yahweh Shah Mashiach. Right? This is the trial of our faith. It says, so we got a trial. We going through these dark times. We going through these problems and these issues, right? But it's gonna be tried. You're gonna be tried, brother. That's a part of maturity. Growing up is being able to have different adversity, having different problems. How would you ever know how strong you were if you never lifted? And I'm talking about spiritually, right? You'll never know the depths of your strength. You never know what you can take. And that's why the Lord got to put us through it. But he said he ain't going to put nothing on you that you're not able to bear. That's why you got to have faith and believe. Okay. Let me see here. It says 1 Timothy 6:11. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Right? We're supposed to flee the ways of this world, man. And follow after righteousness, man, godliness. And the men of the Great Millstone are putting that on, man. You can act who you are. You can say what you want. You can try to disrespect us, right? You can say what you want, but we are putting on the traits of Yahweh Shema Shai, right? And we're modeling after that. Anybody that says differently, that just means you're being out of sorts, man. Anybody scoffing, you just being a demon. Because brothers have always treated you well, man. Don't let the demons of this world take over your spirit and the love you've been shown from this truth. Then 2 Corinthians 13:5, it says, examine yourselves whether ye be in the faith, right? Whenever you go to see a doctor, you do an examination, right? You do. So you got to do a self-diagnosis on your and be like, I need to work on this. I need to work on that. I need to be more mature. I need to be more patient. I need to be more long-suffering. I need to be more caring and giving. We were talking about this. One, what would Yahweh Shai do? And would you do that to Yahweh Shai? That's the questions you need to ask yourself when you're dealing with brothers. Would you say that to Yahweh Shai? That's how you reach a truly mature level, when you can start learning how to come to those answers with that thought process. It says, whether ye be in the faith, prove your own selves. Know ye not your own selves, how that Yahweh Shai Hamashiach is in you, except ye be reprobates? Now I trust ye shall know that we are not reprobates. So don't be a reprobate. Don't be void of judgment. Prove your own selves, man. Know ye not your own selves. That's the one I mentioned earlier. You Brother, you got to know yourself. Examine yourself. Be more mature. Pray for more maturity, right? Pray to be on a different level, right? The Lord is trying to show us a different path. And like I said, I ain't gonna act like we ain't gonna be upset about certain things. You know, we were going into where it says be angry. That goes into be holy and sin not. So, you know, we just tapping more into the spirit and understanding Yahweh Shabbat Shah. We gonna get mad at the heathen. We gonna get mad at Esau. We gonna be mad at the 2/3. But we still gotta have a great level of maturity while walking with Yahweh Shabbat Shah. Because we're gonna show the world. It says, let your light so shine that we should glorify the works of our Father which is in heaven. We're about to rule this earth, right? So we have to have a mature mindset in dealing with things. So, hey, man, I truly do pray that this lesson was edifying. I want to give all the praise, the honor, and the glory to Yahweh Shai, Ba'asham, Rachakodash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone to rule well, and peace and mercy to the elect. Until next time, Shalom.